You ever look down at yourself and realise that you put your shirt on back to front? Anyway, hello everyone. Alright, cross your fingers that OBS doesn't crash when I change screen. Hey, we're fine. Hello, I've got my shirt on back to front. I've discovered this. Hello everyone, it's Tuesday the 3rd of February. No one is sure how we've made it to February. It's nearly 3 o'clock here in the UK. It is rainy, which is how you know it's the UK. We're doing some co-working today. This will be very gentle. We're probably not going to Pomodoro. It's probably going to be loosey-goosey. But yeah, I've got a bunch of things to do, some random crap at the beginning of the stream, and then I'll be getting into some actual work after that. So yeah, I had mentoring yesterday, which is very helpful because I was like, I didn't get to do much work last week because I was feeling so unwell, and that I was feeling worried that I wouldn't get back to it. And so yeah, the reminder that, you know, my mentor at this point has known me for 7 years, nearly. It will be 7 years in September, and I trust her to remind me that this is what happens sometimes, and this is how I work, and that I'll be fine. So that was very helpful. And then I had choir in the evening, and I have discovered that so I've swapped from alto to soprano, and so because I was having to sing over the break of my voice a lot. I'm a mezzo, and in the altos I was singing over the break of my voice all the time, and so I was having to strain to try and keep control of that. And so I thought I'll try a term in the sopranos. And what I've learned is when I have to sing a top G over and over again, including quite like barely and out of the blue, thanks Mozart. I love singing. I love Mozart. I love singing Mozart. But oh my god, by the end of last night, my throat was actively hurting. And I was not the only one having trouble, which was reassuring. Because, like, I can hit that note, but can I hit that note 1,000 times in 2 hours, including, like, octave jumps and going completely barely to it? No. No, I can't reliably. After a while, my throat will give out, and I will squawk at points. It wasn't too bad. I feel like I think it's worse than it was, but, yes. So, here we are. I spent a few hours lying in bed, in intense executive dysfunction, and then I kind of got to a point where I was like, I think I could push myself out of bed now, and I pushed myself out of bed and basically straight here, so that I didn't have a chance to really think. um, so yes, I've got a bunch of random bits to do, um, which I will get through first, and then I will get to some reading. So first I need to make myself a list. As always, if you wish to join in with co-working, there are commands up here for how to do so. Your tasks will go here publicly, but you don't have to. You can just vibe. Also, if you're watching this on a VOD, there's no music in the background. Add your own music. If you're watching this live, enjoy the absolutely not copywritten Final Fantasy music. Alright, so I know I have... So next I'll put meds. Oh no. Now meds. So I've got to sort those. Because otherwise I run the risk of forgetting. Oh. Excuse me, forgetting to take my medication because it's just like here in this basket otherwise. And so I need to sort that out. Then I need to do my universal credit. I have to report my income and expenses every month. Then if I just put email, I'll know what that is. And then I need to look up expenses form. So I got an email yesterday telling me that I've been accepted to the Mad Studies conference I applied to in Glasgow in person, and that's awesome because I'm quite isolated. I'm in a university that has a research centre for medical humanities, but because I also work, and that's great, and it's lovely to have other researchers researching my field around me, but also they're all completely snowed under because of the state of universities here in the UK, and there's not as many events as there used to be a few years back. And it's not Mad Studies focused, so I don't have any direct connection to the Mad Studies field within the UK. And this will introduce me to them, basically, and make me more known amongst them. That's terrifying, but also awesome. So I'm really excited, but it's expensive to travel, because the cheapest way to get to Scotland from the south of England is flying. I can't fly because airlines cannot be trusted with my wheelchair. So I'm getting the train, which, to be fair, because I'm not actually near an airport, by the time I'd gotten to the airport and then got on a plane, actually it probably would be about the same as getting the train directly from my city. So I have looked up how much that train is, and I did die slightly inside because that's before I've sorted accommodation or anything. So basically I want to price everything up and look up there's some like financial support for going to things like this that my division has. So I want to look up that form, look up whether I apply for that in advance or after the fact, basically, so that then when I am pricing things out, I know how much of it I'm going to have to do myself. Thankfully, because my fees got waived for this year, I can afford it. So yeah, anyway, that, I think I'll just leave it as having my bits and pieces on there first. Just looking at my other tabs that I have open. The ways that I keep to-do list things is my email. I archive anything that's dealt with or, that I don't need to do anything about. And then I leave in there things like a to-do list. Or sometimes I leave things in there, even if I've dealt with them, that I'm just like, I want to be reminded of my success. So, like, in my work email currently has that email from about the conference, but also has the results from my review, just so that whenever I load my email, I see a nice thing. Anyway, so yes, the first thing I need to do is my medication. I'm going to turn the music up a little bit. Do I have 2 instances of this open? I do. Good work, me. There we go. That should still be okay with my voice. Okay. So let's get you out of the way first of all. Just while you're going to notice that I'm only doing 6 days of medication. That's because I lost one of these. I think it might be at my mum's. I've only had 6 of them since then, so currently every 6 days I have to redo my medication, instead of every 7. That's fine. Often what will happen is there'll be a couple of days where I just take the medication straight from the blister packs anyway, but the problem with that, I have alarms on my watch to tell me to take medication, but I can forget if I'm not careful. Don't know if you're getting any of the ASMR of blister packs being opened. I have cut myself on these, so this is the way medication comes here in the UK, is in these blister packs. I have cut myself on these so many times. It's ridiculous. Oh, I put one in the wrong place as well. Chuck that in the rubbish. Some more of that. Thankfully, I'm not on enough medication that I will forget, like, what I'm meant to be taking when. It's very simple in that respect. But what I do is get lazy and not take my vitamins. If as well as forgetting doses if I don't do this. Okay, and then I want these two. Yes. This is the one I'm nearly out of as well. 1, 1, 1. 1, 1, 1. And that's it. Ta-da! And then I will leave one of them out because I need to take that medication now. All right. And I then keep those nearby because then I will remember to take them. So now we get the ASMR of me swallowing pills, which I'm not going to do as ASMR, don't worry. God, I hate these fucking horse pills. These ones here. These are my calcium, magnesium, and phosphate ones to deal with my, like, really severe deficiencies. So I really have to take them, otherwise I basically can't do anything. But they're so, like, look at... This is my thumb for reference. Thumb for scale. The B12 is much more polite. Okay, there we go. Now that that's done, I've been putting that off for several days, so that makes me feel better. Okay, I've got my universal credit to do. But I can do... so yeah, for those who don't know, have an impromptu benefits lesson as well. Universal credit here in the UK is like the general low income benefit. Oh no, I don't want to make a claim. I want to log in. Thank you. Oh, you're texting me. That was my computer, not yours. Because I picked up my phone and it was like, oh, you're not charging anymore. Are you gonna... Have you sent me this supposed text message? The government website is so reliable. Yeah, anyway, so universal credit is the generic low income benefit. It's replaced a bunch of others over the years. It is means tested, which means if you have a variable income, which I do, then you have to report your income each month. And basically, if you are if you maintain being over for a while, what you would be allowed to earn, then they take you off it. So this is them making sure that I haven't earned too much. You have not sent me the code. Request a new code. That's definitely my phone number that it's sending it to. This is very weird. Is it because I've got... I mean, I do live in a phone signal desert. But normally, even at my desk, I do get messages. Is their system struggling? Do I need to do this later? Must be. Okay. Well, let's leave that there and see if a code pops up. It expires in 15 minutes, so if it takes longer than that, I'm screwed. Yeah, I'll leave that there for now. I can do this one. It's the other thing in my email. It's still not come through. Alright, that's that one done. I'm trying to confirm it's me, universal credit. Oh, I've realised the other thing I need to do. Alright, let's look up that expenses form now. Since apparently I'm not allowed to log in to the Universal Credit website. If that's a problem that's happening to everyone, that's going to be a serious problem, because all the people who are... So I'm not on a type of it that requires me to job search, because I'm classified lower capacity for work-related activity. Say that 3 times fast. But for a lot of people, they not only have to declare their income, if they're job searching, they also have to declare that they're job searching, and they're really aggressive about you doing that at the right time. So yeah, I look for PGR fund, research allowance for non-funded PhDs. My understanding is that you can claim the money from expenditure. Let's look at the form just to confirm that. I don't mind if it's this way round. Obviously there's the risk that I will end up having to pay all the money myself, because they could say no. It looks future. I'm just going to put it through then. Let me get the date for the conference, because I know the month. It's not going to help me. 15th of June. Amount requested, 75, which is the maximum I can request. I would request more, if I could, because it's definitely going to be more than £75, but it's £150. Oh, let me actually double check that email. The allowance is £150 pro rata, so for all PhD students. Ah, shit. If I claim it now, I'm in the minimum period of registration. But I won't be by the time that I go to the conference. I think what I have to do is I have to write in this box, my minimum... My NPR ends 1st April 2026, so I am not totally sure if I'm able to claim this, but I would like to try, as attending this conference whilst a huge deal will... attending this conference will be expensive, but is a big deal professionally. I am claiming the maximum because it rolls over, but only if you have 2 years left within your NPR, which I definitely don't because my NPR will be up by then. Allowed for someone in the last year of their NPR for a part-time self-funded student in the last year of their NPR. I should probably say what the conference is. Speaking at the University of Glasgow. I Okay, speaking at Figment's Madness, Health and Creativity Conference at the University of Glasgow and Centre for Mad Culture UK. There we go. It's a big deal professionally as Mad Studies events in the UK are not super common, and this will allow me to engage with my research field with peers in my research field directly. There we go. I've put it in. If I get my £75, I do. If I don't, I don't. So we'll say that's done. And I will now do my budget before I attempt to log into the Universal Credit website again. It's so weird that, yeah, it's... What's worrying is that their system can't tell that they're not managing to send the text message. Like, you'd think that their system would be able to go, sorry, this isn't going through properly. Anyway. Okay. So, that one of those is not that. I've got to look up which is which. Food. Soul tax. Those are all correct. Right, let's just look up that. I would like my... No, not activity. Payments, there we go. Order history. Where's the... Okay, I paid for something with Google, and it is coming up as the wrong thing. What did I pay for? I guess I want my Google Pay history. It's coming up as Google Play, not Google Pay. So my everything's confused. Huh. This is interesting. What is this transaction? Oh, check for other payments and transactions to the Google Payment Center, okay? Oh, it's my YouTube subscription. I was like, what is $12.99? It's my YouTube Premium. Okay. Now I've got to put money I don't have into places where it needs to be. You've assigned more than you have. Yep, that's because not all my money's come in yet. Hang on. I have overspent here as well. How is that overspent? Oh, because something's not in the right place. Hold on. Just cover them from my savings. That's easier. It's a small enough amount. All right. Okay, now why is this? That's all fine. That's fine. Why is it? Why did it assign £125 to leisure? What? Oh, hang on, I'm looking at the wrong month. All right. Yeah, it's just because the rest of the other bits of my money haven't come in yet. I don't like leaving myself underfunded, so I'm just going to take it out of my savings and then put it back in my savings. Excellent. That's that done, which means that because it's now all sorted, because I use my budget app both to budget but also to keep track of what I'm spending, so that when I have to declare earnings and whatnot, I can tell. I have tried logging in again, and it does not look. Problems. Yeah. There's something wrong with their system, because I've now requested 4 text messages. And none of them are coming through, which is a problem, because I'm legally required to declare this. The mark my budget is done, though. When the government stops you from doing the last task on your to-do list. This is so annoying. Don't get me wrong, I love two-factor authentication. I think it's really important to have, because it keeps you very safe. However, I'd like it to work. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'll have my phone in front of me. If at some point it gets a text message, I then know that their system is working again. So then I can log back in and do that. The last thing I need to do is I need to reply to this email and confirm that I'm going to the conference. Yeah. I confirm that I do intend to attend and speak at the conference. If it is possible to request a fee waiver now, then I would love to do so, as I will be travelling from south of England, and as a wheelchair user, doing so is more expensive. Actually, no, I'm doing the thing again. I'm over-explaining. All I need to say is I would like to request the fee waiver that you've offered. Yes, I confirm that I do intend to attend and speak. If it's possible to request a fee waiver now, then I would love to do so. If they then come back and say, can you tell us on what basis you're requesting the waiver, then I will. But I need to make sure I'm not over-explaining. Like every time I ask for any kind of extension on everything and I tell the specific reason, you don't need to do that. And I need to get better at not doing that. I have confirmed my attendance. Woohoo! Other things I need to do include looking at and booking where I'll be staying. But that is for another time, I think. I don't think I need to do that right this second. What I'm going to do is do some reading. So I started this yesterday. What day of the week is it? Yesterday was so long ago. This is Why We Play by, and I've got to get her name right, Robert or Roberta. It depends how it's pronounced. It ends in an E, so I don't want to presume it's Roberta, but it could be Roberta. Robert Hermione or Hamion. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm very sorry. This is an anthropologist. This is a book called Why We Play. So I didn't know this about anthropology, but apparently there was initially, like in beginning of the 20th century anthropology, the trend was to write books about play, ritual, like a generalized aspect of culture that you then looked at over multiple cultures. This apparently became a problem because people were only writing about Western cultures. Powerful white men were writing about white cultures. So people stopped doing that, understandably, because, you should be studying all cultures in anthropology, and not like claiming, more to the point, it's okay to study predominantly white culture, but claiming that you're writing a generalized account of something and then being specialized is the problem. And this is this occurs in all fields of research. I'm very conscious of it as a person who only speaks one and a bit languages. So there's a whole load of stuff that, like where I was writing about visual novels, I'm very conscious I don't read Japanese, so or Chinese, any of the forms of Chinese. So there's a whole like world of scholarship out there that's probably about visual novels that I've not looked at. That's a definite like weakness of my chapter, and I believe I specifically say it in that chapter. So, but and I don't mind it because it's only a part of my thesis. I don't know that I would have written a whole thesis on visual novels without being able to speak at least one of those languages, because that would feel inappropriate to me. Anyway, the point is, anthropology stopped being about these generalized ideas as a response to this like assumed whiteness of the whiteness that was assumed to be the sole dominant culture. But the downside to that is that you then don't get anything that's like, hey, let's look at ritual across different cultures. Because there is a benefit to that as well, right? So this is an anthropologist who specializes in a part of southwest Mongolia. Um, and she has written a generalized book on play. Her core study is of this Mongolian culture, and a bit of Siberian culture that sort of neighbors it. But then also includes loads of other cultures as well. And I think the one of the ways that you solve that default whiteness problem is by having generalized books be written by people who are writing from a another culture's perspective primarily, right? It's one way to counter it. It's not the only way to counter it, but it's one way. I'm just moving my microphone out of the way so I can see the very small text. It's hang on, if I move it closer, you'll be able to see. It's very small because it's a PDF, unfortunately, not an ebook. So I could zoom it actually. That's a bit better. Actually, no, it's just going to annoy me turning the page. But yeah, so I didn't get very far in. I'm 24 pages in. I'm also, actually, give me a moment because my headphones are annoying me because they have to be plugged in. You might hear my music for a second, but I'll fix that. Oh, or I won't hear any music at all. Let me just pause that and start again. 1 second. Oh, it's just very quiet. Okay, no, I need to turn it up for me, not you. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's better. Although I may now... Hold on, I'm just going to go get a hair clip, because otherwise my hair's going to fall on my face and annoy me. And I'm actually going to go to the bathroom while I'm up. Be right back. Okay. So yes, this is me looking into theories of play. Obviously, play specifically in relation to tabletop games is a thing to look at as well. Oh my god, I'm out of breath. I went 10 steps. Body. But I also, I want to look at other sources as well, and I thought this would be really interesting. I've got some other readings as well to put on my e-reader. Can do that as well. I get any text messages whilst I was away? No, obviously not. Yeah, I got to campus yesterday. I had already downloaded this and planned to read it. And I got to campus and realized that I had completely failed to put any of it onto my Kobo. So I've got this one. some of this might be duplicates. Because I did move some of it on there. Kobo. Skip the ones with the same names. Okay. Yeah, the problem was they were in my downloads folder on this computer. This computer was turned off. So that was very helpful to me. Okay. She also writes in French, and she pointed out, because the bit of a language that I speak is French, she pointed out that the French, so in English, we have play and games as separate, wholly separate words, right? In French, it's jeu and jouer. So a game is un jeu, and to play is jouer. So it's really interesting that they're conflated in French, but not in English. And she also like there's other languages. She sort of, offers the comparison of Russian and yeah, it was interesting to me. Playing allows us to naturally test our limits while suspending the constraining conditions of reality in order to imagine other paths. I like this. Playing. I really like that quote, especially because she uses the word suspending. So it sort of like links into the idea of suspension of disbelief, but it's suspending the constraining conditions of reality. Oh, in order to imagine other paths. I think I've mentioned this before whilst taking notes. I don't do this actively, but when I'm reading, I read multiple lines at once. And I know this in two ways. One, sometimes I will write a word that's actually from two lines on when I'm taking notes. And also, when I was learning to read, and I would read to family members, I would skip lines, and then they'd say what was in that line, and I would know. So, um, I read multiple lines at once, and sometimes it trips me up when I'm writing. Have you filled up your emotional support water bottle today? Put that on your to-do list. Ryan Sutton Smith. That's hilarious to me because my granddad's name was Brian and he lived in Sutton. And my birth name was Smith. That's like weird. Early 90s play theory. Okay. This is the other thing with when you start working on something like this, the first thing you read is as useful for giving you the references to the other things as it is anything else. Um, Seems meaningful that these orientations have had little or no influence in France. Okay. The French definition that she's talking about here, like, combines play and game a bit more than the English definitions do. That makes language. But this is interesting for like analog game theory, um analog game studies, because when you're thinking about like definitions of what a role-playing game is, or what a game is, what a, you know, a board game is, um you kind of need to know what a game is before you decide if something is a role-playing game or a board game, right? um a wild string of words. um and I'm not too, I don't want to get too into the weeds of that kind of definition. I think that's really interesting for people doing that work. Because I think there are instances where I'm like, consider for a start, where I was looking at visual novels are often thought of as video games. Um, because they are often syndicated via video game websites and apps and so on. But they're ultimately their own thing. But then some also include more like gameplay mechanics. Like I've been playing uh Princess Serana, which is the sequel to Long Live the Queen. And that is a game where you have stats that you, it's still a visual novel, you still like read and and then take you know, it's still made in Ren'Py, you read and you take decisions, but the decisions that you make include like a Fire Emblem or Persona style going to classes um that raise your stats, and then you need certain stats to pass certain skill checks to have certain outcomes, and sometimes you just get assassinated. And you get killed a lot in both of those games. It's great. Um and you know, at that point the line between a visual novel and a video game gets blurrier and blurrier, right? I would argue that actually it gets closer to choose your own adventure game, to choose your own adventure book. Um because many of those had stats that you would gain. Um but yeah, that's beside the point. Also, I keep talking instead of reading. This is why we do Pomodoros. There's not even anyone here talking to me. It's just me. It's just me wittering on to myself. Well, that's interesting. 27. And that's a... There's a reference from 1938. Which is in the earlier time of those like generalized studies that I was talking about earlier. Quote, RE, general and specific European of Oh no, it's why we play, it's not how we play. I know what book I'm reading. Excuse me. It's now interesting to me that in talking about etymology, she's talking about the Latin ludus, which is where ludic comes from. Ludic in game studies is used to refer to like the rules related aspects of the game. Oh, is that a text message? Oh, look, my universal credit codes. Okay, we might be able to do this now. Obviously those codes are no longer valid, but if I request a code now, are you going to send me a code? Yes. Okay. I entered the code. I did it wrong. Oh. I got sent so many codes, I entered the wrong one. Forward your income and expenses. Is there anything? I got some messages in my journal. Was it just reminders? It was. Okay. Report your income and expenses. All right, a brief pause then from reading for me to do the task I was trying to do. Okay. Excuse me, sneezing. I mean, I managed to mute myself, so I'm not sure why I'm excusing myself to you. January. Oh, if I look in January and then I look in, yeah. Calculator open. Oh no. Plus. Okay. Is it 2? Oh wait, no. 27354. optional because date is optional because it's over several. I guess this is an other kind of expense. How much did you spend? $32, yes. I have submitted my income and expenses, but I'm also required, because they're weird. Guess this is a message from my work coach. Reporting as requested that my savings account contains and 40 pence, yeah. As of the 1st of February. But it's not 2027. Oh, they also messaged me, and I did not see it. Final submission date of the 1st April 2028. Officially, my final submission date is the 1st of April 2028. I remain a part-time PhD student because that might matter to them. When did this change happen? I guess they want me to... Basically, I got a bunch of income. My bank account. I don't have an ISA. I do have a savings account. I have one savings account. Much is in this account, not as much as there was last month. Oh, I've got to give, hang on. I've got to give things that I can't say out loud. I've got to make sure I do not say these numbers out loud. Yeah, so basically where people were helping me pay my fees, I received a bunch of money that they weren't expecting me to. And they were understandably concerned about this number. See, this is technically a savings space, so I don't know the way my bank does it is space. I guess the number is ending in the same amount. But there we go. And now I don't have any. Oh god, it's like doing this whole section of the bloody application form again. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so they changed it so that they wanted me to report what's in my savings account every single time. So now I have to do that. And it's ridiculous because a month after they required me to do that, the amount of my savings dipped because I paid my bloody fees. The thing it was for. They just don't trust you, and it's I don't like it. It's dehumanizing and it sucks. But the task is done now. So we can mark it as done. Yeah. I also saw, I want to know, I don't know, because I was just about, I had this thought of, I could just play Hightail now instead. And then I had a second thought, which is that I haven't looked into this fully, but I've seen on Blue Sky today a suggestion that Simon, who runs Hightail, is pro AI or pro Gen AI, and like has made comments to this effect that he doesn't think it's a problem to use it, although he claims he doesn't use it in the development of Hightail. But I want to look into that more. I'm already aware that Minecraft is on the boycott list regarding Gaza, the BDS boycott list, which is part of the reason I've not been playing Minecraft as much on here. But yeah, it's yeah, it's so annoying because again, you're at the point where firstly, boycotting is a privilege. I think it's a really powerful thing to do, and I think if you are able to do it and you want to do it as a form of protest, that's fantastic, and I encourage you to do so. Unfortunately there are some people who have built their careers around something, and it's a very difficult decision to move away from that. I've been really impressed by, this is not Minecraft, this is The Sims. The Sims got bought out by a Saudi company, or EA got bought out by a Saudi company, and there supposedly The Sims will not change, but it will, because the people with the money will tell you to do something like get rid of the queer stuff in The Sims or things like that. That sort of, once an ownership occurs, that sort of pressure is inevitable. Like, I mean, we've seen that with what EA have done to BioWare, right? Anyway, and there's a Sims creator I follow called Lil Simsy. She actually has been very public about moving her content away from The Sims more and more. With Minecraft is hard because obviously it's Mojang that is then owned by Microsoft, but they're pretty, even though Mojang does all the development, they're pretty synonymous at this point. And it's a difficult one. Also, they're on the I think they're on the optional boycott list. They're on the we would encourage you to boycott. I can't remember. But yeah, it's complicated and it's messy, and you sort of hit a point, like, I'm pretty sure Amazon's on the boycott list, and this is Twitch. Twitch is owned by Amazon. And then, if you want to be, I've talked about using a load of Google related stuff. Google is extremely pro AI in a way that is, destroying people's livelihoods and the environment. And you can't, like, in a harm reduction way, it is reduction, it's not eradication, right? So I think boycotting, you choose the boycotts you can manage where you can. I can't boycott Amazon as well because I'm so reliant on home delivery, because going out of the house is so much harder for me. They deliver my groceries more often than not, so I can't. And I am now trying to use other companies more, but those companies aren't much better, let's be fair. It's such a mess. Sometimes the world is just shit. Yeah, anyway. Yeah. The whole point was to say that I've seen this stuff about Hightail and I'm gonna look into it more. This is not work. This is just me talking. Partly because I don't really have the focus anymore. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased I've done this much. And that I'm here at all, doing this at all. But oh my goodness. I think the fatigue might be hitting me now. How much did I sleep last night? I actually got 8 hours sleep. That's a bloody miracle. Well, that's the other thing. I don't think it is possible to have truly ethical consumption. Um, I think it very much is a case of harm reduction. I think even on the BDS website, they talk about this in terms of like, no, I don't think you are necessarily expected to fully 100% boycott every single company. I mean, I'm sure there are people who do and can, and that's great for them. But you know, it's one thing to the circumstances in which the only place I could eat is McDonald's are far less than if I was, you know, a Minecraft YouTuber who's built up their entire career around Minecraft. You know, it's it's much easier. The only circumstance in which I can think where you'd be forced to eat at McDonald's is like if it was you were driving somewhere and you stopped at a service station and all they had was McDonald's, but that's not going to happen because there's always other places there. So I think the big thing for me with boycotts always is that it's a question of privilege, that, you know, those aspects of my disabilities I've talked about mean that I can't always boycott those things. As a disabled person, I also there's not to bring up plastic straws, but there are things that I do as a disabled person that as you know, a person concerned about climate change, I would ideally not do. I try to use reusable things like for as much as I can, but there's things that I need to take care of myself because of my disability that are not reusable and you know, are disposable things made with plastics. And I can't change that I need those things until there's a, you know, if there are better alternatives, then I absolutely take those and use those, like trying to use things that are bamboo based is an option I get a lot because bamboo grows so fast, it's way more sustainable. Not that there aren't places where I'm sure bamboo is deforested in places as well, but it as options go, I'd rather use bamboo based products than plastic ones. But I can't ultimately change that. So I do think that's an element of there being no ethical consumption because it's not it's not an option for me. There are people who live in food deserts. There are people who live in places where, you know, like literally the only options there are companies that are problematic. I still really support boycotting things. You know, I think it's a personal decision. I'm reading the book I'm reading, like not for work at the moment, is microactivism. So I'm really interested to see if that book says, you know, covers this kind of thing at all. Because I think boycotting is often thought of as being a form of microactivism. But actually, if you really, you know, really do it seriously, it can become quite difficult. It's a privilege to go to. When I was living on an even smaller income, um, and when I was more physically able, I would go to multiple supermarkets because you would get things from different supermarkets based on how cheap they were. In the same way that people go to Costco, and then to, you know, a general supermarket. I can't do that now. Um, uh, so it like raises the cost of my food. and they're, it's a obviously not a privilege to be really broke. But it is a privilege to be able to, to respond to that by going and buying everything from the cheapest supermarkets, doing it in person. So, because some delivery services are marked up, having the full option of what's there, um, you know, um, it's rough, it's hard. And yeah, I can give the in fact, let's look together at what they say. This is their boycott list. They have priority targets. Yeah, so they have priority targets, which are the ones that they would advise that you really avoid because of their involvement in the genocide in Palestine. Then there are pressure targets, which is where Microsoft is, and thus Minecraft. And Google and Amazon are in that one as well. Although Xbox is a priority target. So, and they do a really good like description in this of what firstly the description of the genocide, but also like the idea of strategically targeting particular companies for maximum impact, and why that's important, how they select their targets, and they give specific descriptions of why they, advise particular companies. As it happens, other than, the Xbox being owned by Microsoft link, I don't actually pay any money to any of these companies anyway. um, so of the priority targets. So I guess I have I have an Intel processor in my computer, but which I guess actually I have bought since the boycott began, thinking about it. It depends when Intel was added, I don't know. But yeah. I think it's worth looking at. I think it's worth informing yourself and deciding to what extent you want to engage with it. But yeah, this was a wild segue. I've closed my work. To be fair, I think I can tell that I'm not going to get any more done. Yeah, I haven't had Game Pass for ages. Working with Microsoft tech, again, that's the thing that you professionally can't avoid, right? Like, I have Microsoft on my computer. I run a Windows computer. I've thought before about, and I have in the past switched to Linux, and then inevitably switched back because although a lot of games run through Wine now and stuff, and more and more games are being like better established on Linux, it's still easier if you're on Windows, unfortunately. And yeah, exactly. If you don't do your job, you have no income. Any kind of activism is always going to tell you to look after yourself first. And we've talked about this before, like we were talking not that long ago, I was talking about the Black Panther movement and how they had like they had care workers of varying kinds, be that people offering medical support or yoga teachers or childcare or all these things to help look after people's needs through the very difficult work of fighting white supremacy. And I think, the same is the case here, in the same way that, yeah, I've got to yeah, that's true. And I think that's the whole thing, is that you can look at it and go, these are changes I could make. So why don't I at least make those? And it will save you some money being off Game Pass. Um, but yeah, and I think that's the best way to approach it always is, you know, if you have any kind of first aid training, the first thing you're told in assessing a situation is, are you safe? Yeah, yeah. It's very possible. I always look at that where I'm like, I played, I think the only thing in the last like 5 years I've specifically played on Game Pass rather than buying it was Starfield. And I'm glad I did that on Game Pass rather than buying it. That was the right decision. Um, yeah. Um, and yeah, there may be people like me who look at that list and go, well, actually, no, there's nothing, where I can obviously I identify that I probably have paid Intel some money, but um, there's still nothing else on there where I see, hey, I could get rid of this subscription or whatever. I don't have Disney Plus, or anything like that. So yeah. And as noted, we are on Twitch, which is an Amazon-owned company. So, and I post things to YouTube, which is Google-owned, and there's only so much you can get away from all of it, especially if you work in tech or content creation or anything like that. So, yeah. Well, I got all of those things done, which they were all important, and I needed to do them, and I've done some reading. I might do some more reading later. We'll see, how that goes. I'm probably actually going to wind up here. I think for those who've been around for co-working streams in the past, co-working often tends to be a bit shorter because it's much more demanding on my brain than placing blocks. But yeah, hopefully I will see you all. I probably won't be tomorrow because I have therapy tomorrow. It's the first week of the month. And that could be a lot because it often is. So hopefully I'll see you later in the week. At least that is certainly my plan. Yeah. Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other. I hope your week goes well. And yeah, look after yourselves first, then look after other people around you as best you can. And I will see you all soon. Right. Bye.